Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
It's Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. President Joe Biden trying to contain the fallout inside the Democratic Party following his debate against Donald Trump. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez has more on Biden's recent meeting with the governors.
Tonight, White House officials and President Biden himself stumbling on damage control, a week after that poor debate performance.
We've got to be honest about that. So we need a reset. We need a course correction. We've got to acknowledge that this was not just one bad night.
Biden telling Democratic governors gathered at the White House Wednesday his plan is to stop scheduling events after 8 p.m. so he can get more sleep. That comment, according to sources, leaving some governors privately frustrated. Biden was also asked about his health by Hawaii Governor Josh Green. According to the New York Times, quote, Mr. Biden replied that his health was fine. It's just my brain. An attempt at humor, according to his campaign chair, that fell flat with some in the room, despite their public support.
The president is our nominee. The president is our party leader. And the president has told us, and he was very clear back there, that he is in this to win this.
The White House's evolving reasons for Biden's bad debate are also raising eyebrows. Officials now contradicting the White House press secretary, saying Biden was seen by his doctor days after the debate.
He did not get checked out by the doctor. It's a cold, guys, it's a cold. And I know that it affects everybody differently. We have all had colds. And so, no, he was not checked by the doctor.
A White House official tells CNN Biden had a, quote, brief check, not a physical, after the debate. In private, Biden has acknowledged that the next few days are critical, packed with a high-profile interview and 2 stops in battleground states, and appealing directly to black voters in a pair of new interviews.
I had a bad night, and the fact of the matter is that, I screwed up. I made a mistake. That's 90 minutes on stage. Look at what I've done in 3.5 years.
All right, for more on that, let's bring in 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Lara Beck and Republican Garrett Bartlett. Good to see you both. Lots to get to today. Laura, at least 2 sitting Democratic members of Congress have called on Biden to drop out. How seriously should we take those calls?
Well, I think there is definitely room for discussion within the party, and I think those discussions have to happen. I think when you look back at that debate, which was now over a week ago, and we are still continuing to talk about it, it was a really bad night. And I think people have a right, and I think people have a reason to be concerned about that. I think those discussions need to have place, and I think President Biden, probably one of the best things he can do is get himself out there right now. The more we see of him, I think that will help people make better decisions and feel more comfortable. But at the same time, I think being unscripted, being out with people, being out in the communities, doing rallies, really having that aggressive schedule, I think will either allay concerns or will make those concerns worse. At this point in time, the most important thing we have to do is we have to defeat Donald Trump in November. That's job one for Democrats, and really that's job one for our democracy. So we've got to defeat him. He himself didn't have a great debate, but at the same time, we've got to put our best effort forward. And if that means we have some conversations about who the best candidate is, then so be it. We need to do that.
Allie, to Lara's point, Republicans have made it an issue of Biden's age throughout the campaign. If Biden were to be replaced on the ballot, would that actually hurt Trump by taking away a key argument?
Look, I think that Donald Trump is going to win in November no matter what. And I think that people are starting to realize that on both sides of the aisle. I mean, whether or not they replace Joe Biden, at this point, their party looks so weak in the face of all of this. And let's be real, it wasn't just one bad debate performance. I mean, he has been like this really throughout the duration of his presidency. Obviously, I think, it's important that there are people in the Democratic Party that are starting to stand up and say this man can't be responsible for running our country anymore. I think even if they replace him at this point, though, it's a surefire thing that Donald Trump is going to win in November.
Allie, out of all of the names that have been floated as a potential replacement, who are Republicans most worried about, if any?
Honestly, I don't think we're worried at all at this point. No matter who they put at the top of their ticket, I think, first and foremost, I think there's absolutely no way they get around Kamala Harris. I think they have to nominate her just on appearance alone if they don't go with Joe Biden. But truly, I think our party has zero concern. I think this November is in the bag for President Trump.
Lara, same question. Who would you like to see?
Well, time is of the essence here. I think that's a big part of it. So depending on where Joe Biden is and where things unfold over the next few days and in the coming weeks, probably the best bet would be the vice president. She's got the operation already in place. I think she brings an incredible amount of vigor, and standing next to Donald Trump on a debate stage or even side-by-side comparison, there really is no comparison. I think the key would be to having a vice president that would speak probably more to middle America, that might might be a bit more in that line. I think would also be helpful as well. Again, this is a bit premature, but I think that those discussions have to happen, and I think we have to be mindful of that as we're moving forward. I still don't think it's a done deal for Donald Trump, especially when you saw the polling of the head-to-head. I mean, the vice president is within the margin of error on some of those polls. So as we see in the coming weeks, as this evolves, it's going to be very interesting.
If this does happen, though, Lara, I would assume you, as a Democrat here, would want it to happen soon, no?
I think time is of the essence. Yeah, I think time is of the essence. I think one of the challenges with politics always is there is an end date. You cannot move the date to an election. You have ballot requirements in all different states, so you've got to move quickly. And I think dragging our feet is not going to serve us well at this point.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Good conversation. Thank you both. Stick around. We'll come back to you a little bit later in the program. Coming up, we hear from two candidates trying to upset Jennifer McCormick's preferred pick for lieutenant governor. Welcome back. Democrats face multiple choices for lieutenant governor as Saturday's state party convention. Governor candidate Jennifer McCormick had asked delegates to nominate former House Minority Leader Terry Goodin. Opponents already were jumping into the race even before he was announced. Our government reporter Garrett Bergquist sat down with two of Goodin's challengers.
There were rumors that there was going to be a unity running mate, one that was picked from across the aisle, one that was not within the scope and values of the Democratic Party as I see fit. And in the end, we found a Democrat who focused on the same values as a Southern Republican. And this was my fear early on, and we've achieved this.
Tell me how you would approach the office of Lieutenant Governor itself. Let's start with the Lieutenant Governor's role as President of the Senate.
As President of the Senate, we miss out on a lot of opportunities shaping what could or couldn't be done. And on the Republican side, the Lieutenant Governor candidate for the Republicans has said he would make a shutdown of the state until he got his message across. You know what? I kind of agree with him. As on the left, I may take some of those tacks and say, you know what, we need to be focusing on housing. We need to be focusing on the poor. We need to be focusing on things that everyday Hoosiers need and represent. I would love to see a push for a referendum or a ballot referendum for Hoosiers. I would be pushing these and saying, you know what, this is an extreme bill. It's not hitting the floor.
The Lieutenant Governor chairs the board of directors for the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, and that agency's purview includes rental assistance and some other forms of homeowner assistance. How would you approach that role as it pertains to Indiana's housing crisis?
When I first bought my house, I had a $10,000 rental or homeowner assistance down payment given to me. This is the sort of thing we should be doing across the board. We need to stop allowing out-of-state ownership of homes and rentals. If people can never meet the person who owns the home they're renting, they don't have a personal connection and prices are going to keep going up. People are looking at home ownership as a salvation, and we keep taking that away from them. I see homelessness every day. I see people struggling to stay in their homes. I see people struggling to stay out of eviction. We need to change this, and we need a strong advocate who focuses on the people, not these out-of-state homeowners.
The process really began when I was collecting signatures to get my name on the ballot, actually for governor. So I had traveled across the state of Indiana, and when I was out and about talking to people, obviously then about being governor, what I was hearing that people were sick and tired of business as usual. People were sick and tired of just being sick and tired. And obviously through those conversations and observation, I can see that people are hurting. And so I'm a person that I take action. And like I told you before, I like helping people. And so this is the urgency of now, I would say. Now it's time for people to step up, regardless of the barriers in front of them, and get out here and make a difference, because that's the only thing that will change business as usual.
Tell me about how you would approach the office of Lieutenant Governor itself, and let's start with the Lieutenant Governor's role as President of the Senate.
Well, with being the President of the Senate, I know that there is obviously a lot of legislation that comes across the table. So being there to hear firsthand what's coming and get behind those things that really support Indiana, and to make Indiana grow and make Indiana a place where Hoosiers want to stay and people want to come and visit. So legislation is very important, and particularly the offices that I would be over. Obviously there's 26 statutorial duties that I have, but at the top 4, one of them is the Department of Agriculture. And that's the bread and butter of Indiana, literally the bread and butter of Indiana. And so making sure that farmers have what they need to sustain not only the farms, but their families. That's very important, having good quality food, because they determine literally the health of all of Indiana.
The Lieutenant Governor chairs the Board of Directors for the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, and that agency's purview includes some forms of rental assistance and homeowners assistance. How would you approach that role as it pertains to Indiana's housing crisis?
Well, my current role, which is a protector of housing, and so I work with them to a degree now. I make referrals to them all the time with regards to people who find themselves in trouble and cannot pay their rent. So I know how important rental assistance is. I know how important energy assistance is. And so helping them to do what they do best, that to me is a dream. And we all come to the table with areas of expertise, and housing is definitely one of my areas of expertise. So it's just, I mean, to me, it's just easy. It will be easy to work with them and to make sure that they're in position to continue to help Hoosiers across the state. And that includes our rural areas as well.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team looks ahead to a busy state Democratic convention. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. With us once again are Democrat Lara Beck and Republican Allie Bartlett. Democrats have contested races for both Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General at Saturday's Democratic Party convention. Lara, we'll begin with you. The Lieutenant Governor's race is one that we're keeping a close eye on. How worried should Terry Goodin be going into the convention?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound too overconfident, but I think Terry probably has the support and will probably likely come out with the nomination. He's got a long history within the party, and I know that he has been spending a lot of time really reaching out to folks and delegates, particularly as we are heading into the days ahead. So I always take my hat off to anybody who puts their name out there and wants to run. But I think at this point in time, Terry has very long-term relationships and would see him coming through.
Allie, this fight has echoes of the contest between Micah Beckwith and Julie McGuire at the Republican convention. What does this say about what voters want from their parties in 2024?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more of these contested races. I think obviously it's always good when people want to become involved in the process, like Lara said. I definitely think it tells us that voters have elections at the top of their mind. And so I think this is a good thing. I think this means people are engaging in the process and they're getting involved in maybe ways that they historically haven't. And so it's always good when we can get more people involved. And like Lara said, you know, always tip the hat to people who are willing to put their name on the ballot and get that out there and participate.
Laura, we'll come back to you for this next one. Destiny Wells, as you know, has a significant fundraising advantage over Beth White in the Attorney General's race. What is your prediction for this one?
You know, I think it's going to be interesting on the Attorney General's race. I know that really the focus is on beating Todd Rokita, and I think that much of the focus and their campaign work is on who they feel is best positioned to do that at this time. This is not the first time we've had a contested lieutenant governor's race. In fact, we had one in 2020 between Karen Talley and Jonathan Weinzapfel. So I think there's real energy and real enthusiasm to beat Todd Rokita in the fall. I think that it's imperative we do that in the fall. And so I think that each candidate has been making their case directly to the delegates, and we'll see next week.
Allie, in each of these contests, which candidates do Republicans most want to face, and who should they be most worried about?
Listen, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I truly don't think that Todd Rokita has much to worry about. He's proven his popularity with voters time and time again. I'm not sure that we would really be worried in either circumstance at this point. I mean, we've seen the numbers in the past several years in statewide races in Indiana. Republicans are dominating and continue to dominate, so I'm not sure that we have major concern either way.
Okay. Ladies, I want to take a turn to a much different issue now. Governor Eric Holcomb says the state has obtained pentobarbital for use in executions. He's seeking an execution date for a man who killed 4 people back in 1997. Allie, the Holcomb administration has refused to say where it got the drug from. So how can we be sure the execution will be carried out correctly?
You know, listen, I think this is something that obviously the state of Indiana has experience with over the years. This is something that happens here and that our state's been entrusted with periodically. So I don't have concern that it will be carried out correctly and that all of the processes in place have been followed. I'm not sure what type of confidentiality restrictions exist behind information like that, but I assume there's a reason for it. And so, like I said, our state has been entrusted with important matters like this in the past, and I think we'll make sure that we can carry it out in the way that it's supposed to be.
Lara, same question.
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. You know, I'm with Allie. I would certainly hope that they're following the correct processes and procedures. I just find that it's really interesting that as we are just a few months out from a national election and a statewide election, that all of a sudden, you know, these elected leaders who are Republicans have gotten doubling down very hard on the death penalty. I just find that to be really interesting, the timing, since we haven't heard or seen much about it for the last 6 months or so, or even before that. So, not to sound cynical, I hope that's not election year politics. And but I also recognize too that the death penalty is a law in our state, and it is quite a process one has to go through to be executed. Yeah. And all of that is done with great seriousness and through juries and through the legal system.
Quick question here, Laura, before I let you go, and I have less than a minute left. Mm-hmm. Democrats, to your point, have said little about capital punishment on the campaign trail this year. It was a big issue 4 years ago. Could this make capital punishment an issue in the governor's race? 30 seconds.
Oh, I think that's partly what the intention is. I think that's partly what they want to try and do with it.
Okay. Well, there you go. Good. Allie, your thoughts on that? 15 seconds. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, honestly, I'm not sure. I think it's more of a matter of law and order. I'm not sure if it will become a topic of discussion, but it certainly might.
Yeah. Okay. Good conversation, ladies. As always, good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time, and we will be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here, of course, next Sunday morning, as always, at 9:30. And be sure to tune in at 11 o'clock this morning for The Hills Sunday with Chris Steyerwalt. Have a great rest of your weekend.